frequency of training is really important in taper. So you need to be keeping at least 80% of your previous training. And actually for amateur athletes who have a total training volume that's lower than professional athletes, you might even keep it exactly the same. So but it's the maintenance of the intensity that's vital. Keeping that intensity in just allows you to offset any detraining that you might be worried about. So if you've got 2 hours of high intensity training in the build towards the season, then keep it there. It just might be the volume of that high intensity training. So you might not do necessarily all 2 hours of it, but you might be dropping down to 60% of it. Research indicates the range of the length of the taper, anything from just 4 days to 28 days, which can feel like a bit of a, it's not really guidance, is it? Because it's quite a large window, but it is very individual. 2 weeks is typical, and it's also very important to get across that it's event specific. The way that a stage racer would taper is probably very different to a track pursuiter. And just as a bit of guidance, the more aerobic, the more endurance demanding the event is, the less taper you need, which is actually counterintuitive, because you'd think Tour de France riders going into a 3-week long race would need more rest, but they don't. They take less rest. In fact, you even get them on their rest days not wanting to have rest because they feel a bit blocked. But track riders actually take an awful lot of rest leading up to an event. I'm actually going to take you through a couple of examples of that. Right, yeah, so what I wanted to do is to give you an example of 2 different types of taper. So this program here is a taper for 3-kilometre individual pursuit. And don't worry so much about the detail. I think what's key here is really the number of days off. 14 days, but there's lots of days off. There's a few days where the only thing that's going on is an hour and a half easy, or just an hour of zone 3, or 1 times 2k, 1 times 1k effort leading up towards the race. Interesting, quite a common feature, we'll come back to this later on, but see how the rest days are actually pushed back from the event? Leading up to the event, there's some key sessions going on, so don't think the best way to prepare for the race is to take a few days off. That can leave you feeling quite rusty and again quite blocked. But over 14 days worth, the total training is only 12.5 hours. This is for an event that's about 4 minutes in length.
What is normal hours?
Normal hours would be around 18 to 20. Compare that to a taper for a 25-mile time trial, and again 14 days. The total hours here are higher, obviously still not as high as 18 to 20 hours in a week, because it's spread over 2 weeks, this one. So less rest days. In fact, there's still a race effort the weekend before, but a couple of easy rides. But really, you look, the intensity is still very much there, isn't it? Everyone's favourite red line sessions that's there. So there's still an awful lot of intensity there. Less rest. Some of you have heard me speak about the Training Peaks WKO software that we use for training analysis. And what I wanted to do is to show you those 2 different tapers and how they look on the chart, because those 2 tapers, same athlete, same year, different parts of the season. No surprises for me, because I've just got a lot of data on me. So that was the 2006 or 2007, I think. 2006. This chart essentially shows how much training stress I was under at different parts of the year, how fresh I was at different parts of the year, and then also some key race performances, my top 10 performances over 4-minute efforts and over 50-minute efforts or an hour time trial. So the blue line, that's the total training stress, and that's like a rolling average of what you've done the previous 6 weeks. That's why it builds up nicely. And then when you decrease the training, it drops a little bit. The pink line is the acute training stress. That's the stress you've been under for the previous 14 days. So small and short-term fatigue. And the yellow line is the one that's going to be interesting for us here, because this is the training stress balance. This is where we're looking at the amount of training that's being done with the amount of recovery that's being done. So as we get more fresh, hopefully that training stress balance will kick up towards 0 and actually go into the positive as well as you're just about to race. There's lots of videos on WKO on the website if you want to kind of get into some of the key metrics in there. But I'll talk you through this. Firstly, the 25-mile taper that I showed you was this event here. And you can see it's actually been quite successful because I held 244 watts in the national championships. And that was my highest 25 mile per hour in the year. So thankfully, it shows it works. My training stress balance was in the positive. I was at 14 points, which is pretty fresh. So it just shows you that the taper, which in this case just started about 2 weeks out. See the chronic training load has just dropped off a little bit here, and you can see the training stress balance has gone into the positive, and bang, I've got a peak performance. Now you could say, but Helen, look, you've got a bigger training stress balance score into the positive here. But I was having a break, about 2 weeks off the bike. And in that case, yes, I was very fresh, but look at my training load, bang, right, back to where it was at the beginning of the training year. So in other words, I was fresh, but I wasn't fit. Peaking, tapering is all about being fresh and fit to bring form, maximum form. The track championships later on in the year, and I again peaked for I think it was a 3-minute 56, 320 watts. I think what's interesting here is that my training stress balance is higher, so I'm fresher because I've done less training, but I kept sharp with those high intensity efforts that you saw in that taper. And I had a longer, the taper effect was a lot longer, and you can see that the training load almost looks non-existent just because you're going onto the track and you're doing, bang, 2K effort, have an hour off, bang, back on the track doing that, do a kilometre. So there's lots of recovery within that. You know, typically you're not training more than 40 minutes a day when you're heading to that last part of the taper event. So just to summarise some of those key points. As a general rule of thumb, 14 days for shorter events, 10 days is the norm, and for most of you in the range of time trialling events, probably look to start easing you off Wednesday before the following weekend, if that makes sense. It's like a 9-10 day window. And you'll start to see that, I'm just starting to ease you off. The intensity will stay there through the weekend, but you'll just start to see things change. If it's not an event that you need to peak for, we'll probably just keep you training through. That's quite difficult to do. The number of times I get emails particularly on a Friday, I didn't do that last interval because I wanted to be fresh for the race tomorrow, and there's me pulling my hair out. I'm thinking, no, don't do that, because the more you freshen up for every single event you want to race, you're not going to get fit anymore. So if I nag you after you said in a training diary comment about, I just wanted to stay fresh for tomorrow, I'll say, no, please don't do that. You know, stick to the regime, however evil it looks. So we're keeping the number of sessions the same. So if you typically train 5 times a week, we'll keep the sessions 5 times a week. I might pull the plug on one, but it might be because I think we just need a little bit more freshening up. But most of the time it will stay the same. We'll keep the intensity there, but reduce the volume. So one of the key sessions I like to get you to run through those 5-minute blocks at time trial pace. In the week leading up to the key event, we might drop that down to 3. So that's about 60% level. That, while I think of it, one of the things there is then controlling. You think, oh, I've only got 3 this week, I can go harder. And that's something you've got to kind of like just manage yourself there and put the brake on, thinking, no, I've got my TT target. This is about reduced training volume, not making the intensity even higher. And a useful tactic is to put the rest days earlier in the week. So commonly I'll put rest days Monday, Tuesday, so then you can train Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, maybe a day easier on Saturday as a pre-race, just to keep your legs moving, race on Sunday. So you might get a couple of days off in the beginning of the week. I don't think any of you would do this because you've got enough experience, but day off before the race is horrible, isn't it? Your legs just get really, really blocked. And if for some reason you have to take a day off before the race, for example, I know National 25 mile time trial this year is up in Yorkshire. A lot of people have to travel on Friday, and that can be a problem when you're travelling prior to the race. If you can, maybe do an hour of the turbo before you leave. Ideally, it's nice to ride around the course the day before, just to keep it fresh in your mind. But there are some times when that happens, but just make sure you put that into consideration in your warm-up. Maybe just do a slightly longer warm-up before the race. You're lucky. You have a coach to do this for you, so you don't have to worry about it. I saw you all scribbling notes furiously. You know,
how does that change for longer endurance events?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, like I said about the stage racer concept, your races are longer, Bjorn, so you don't necessarily have to take you as much. The only thing you might, and I'm going to talk about this when I talk about glycogen loading strategies in a moment, that might have some kind of impact on it for you. But yeah, the good thing for you is you don't have to do this. You don't have to do the planning. We have to be aware you're all very individual, so it will take some time to get it right. And hand on heart, I've got it horribly wrong sometimes, and I've had to say to people, I'm sorry. I didn't realise that you needed more rest, or vice versa, that you needed to stay sharp. I have got it wrong before. It's that old cliche, isn't it, that coaching is as much about art and the science, and there is a lot of negotiation and discussion. So it takes a few times to get it right. And also, once we might feel, yeah, brilliant, cracked it, and we'll use that same taper again. I mean, Stuart's been tapering for your age group champs last weekend, and we used a similar taper to last year. But of course, this is early season, so we've given Stuart the same taper that he used to good effect last summer. So it's not going to come out exactly right, because the level of training stress that Stuart's had accumulated in the system is different. But you can only go on the data that you've collected, whereas it can get a little bit risky as well. And again, it all comes down to how much you're willing to risk getting something brilliantly rather than being safe just because you want a solid performance. So the correct formula might change, and I really need your help. I need you to feed in. That's why I go on about filling the training diary comments in, particularly as we're leading into the race season. I want to know a little bit more about how you feel. You've got to be able to say to me, how do those 3 times 5 minute blocks feel 4 days out before the competition? Because then I can perhaps tweak the next few days as you're coming into the event. How do those feelings relate to race day performance? Are you feeling in good shape? Do you feel ready for it? Do you feel a bit stale? Are you not sleeping well? Just keep me updated on how it's all going.